There's no doubt that DC Comics are generating some buzz out there. It feels like the Absolute Universe, as you would imagine, being a new, more modern take on some heroes with different traits and takes on them, is doing pretty darn well. People seem to be getting kind of excited for the Jim Lee return to Batman, and things have gotten a little bit better, but they certainly have a long way to go until things get really, really good. So we'll talk about the stuff that are absolutely great trends that portend better things in the immediate and maybe midterm future for DC Comics moving forward into 2025, probably halfway through the year at least. We've got some new developments when it comes to DC's Compact Comics, their new trade paperback format that has been wildly popular, more popular than I ever expected it to be. We've got new books coming out there. I got a few I want to highlight. But then we will talk about some of the bad news and some of the hurdles that they will have to overcome, because the numbers aren't all good, but we will certainly start out with the good first. Superman fans who missed out on DC Comics' new take on the iconic character in Absolute Superman #1 can rest easy. The comic book publishing giant has announced a second printing of the issue after the initial November 6th debut sold out its copies. The re-release speaks to fan enthusiasm for the refreshing vision of the DC Comics universe. Absolute Superman #1's reprint marks the 5th title in the publisher's new all-in line to head back to press, joining DC All-In Special, Absolute Batman, Absolute Wonder Woman, Detective Comics 1090 as issues, earning quickly printed second editions. Now, you do have to take reprint news with a grain of salt, especially a second reprint. Basically what Marvel and DC do these days, which is much different than they've done in the past, is the first print is basically to order. Based on the information that they have and what the orders are going to be, that's what their print run is, and they don't normally overprint and have it sitting by waiting for comic book retailers to come back and be like, oh no, I vastly underordered this, I need a lot more. The pulls are going up and there's more interest generated, and they're like, oh no, what are we going to do? Wait, we already have this giant section of overprints that we've already done. They don't do that anymore, and a lot of times, in fact, when they do the first print, they will do the second print at the exact same time with a new cover. And that's why within 24, 48 hours of the comic book coming out, they're like, it's already gone to second print. It's because it's already been printed a second time based on the metrics that they have that say, hey, interest is high, and we expect reorders to be coming in because now the orders actually have gone over the first printing, and that's kind of how they do it. So the second printing news, you do have to be wary of that. That doesn't always mean, or certainly in the most cases, it does not mean what it meant in the past. But the fact that DC All-In Special, which wasn't highly ordered, you know, if you look at the numbers, I think it was the number 10 selling comic book based on the information that we do have for the month. You would have expected that to be a top 5. That one wasn't doing all that great. Not surprised that that was on a second order. But the numbers for Absolute Batman were really, really strong. They were well over 200,000. I believe Superman and Wonder Woman were both over 150,000. And the fact that they already had enough interest to have a second printing ready certainly speaks volumes to that. And I would definitely say Detective Comics 1090 coming in and getting a second print with Tom Taylor taking over for Ray MV speaks to renewed interest in Detective Comics, which is good news because that Ray MV Detective Comics run was dog shit. It was absolutely awful. And while I don't love Tom Taylor's tendency to go into the past and introduce Secret Sisters and new murders and redefine the origin of the characters in the DC universe, which he certainly does a lot. See also Nightwing. What did the reframing of Dick Grayson's parrots to have Melinda Zucco and all this stupid stuff, what did it really do for the character long term? I would say absolutely nothing. And certainly the reframing that they actually didn't want to kill his parents. They wanted to kill Dick Grayson, when he was 11. Kind of a weird twist. He's doing something similar to that in Detective Comics 1090, but it's certainly refreshing compared to the sit and squat strategy of Ray V, where you basically don't do anything for 3 years straight. You just sit there and be like, I'm going to tell the world's longest story with the world's worst payoff. So that speaks good. There's renewed interest. People are interested in the stuff that should be popular. And hopefully when Jim Lee comes aboard Batman, he's able to prop that back up into being a perennial top 5 selling comic book, as it should be, because Batman's interest is waning just like is on Amazing Spider-Man. And I definitely expect Absolute Batman and Ultimate Spider-Man to continue pantsing those comic books until they get turned around. I believe Jeff Loeb and Jim Lee will do that. So that's good news. Increased interest at the top of the line. That's what they need. They need some headliners. And it seems like, at least for the next 6 months, I would expect those to be kind of headline titles that are up there competing with the most popular books over there at Marvel. Great news. More good news for DC Comics. DC Comics Compact Comics line will expand by 15 titles in 2025, while the 10 volumes published in 2024 have all gone back to press for second printings. And in the case of Watchmen, the launch title, a third printing as well, launched in June 2024. DC's Compact Comics are 5.5 by 8.5 inch trade paperback editions priced at $9.99 of popular titles that are accessible to new readers and longtime fans alike. The titles in 2025 include Kingdom Come, Static Season 1, Deceased, Batwoman, Elegy, Superman Birthright, The Authority Book 1, Superman Batman Book 1, DC The New Frontier, Wonder Woman Blood and Guts, Death, Harley Quinn Wild at Heart, Batman The Long Halloween, Why the Last Man Book 1, V for Vendetta, and We 3. And this is good news. They're expanding the line. There's increased interest. I do take some issues with some of the books that they've chosen. I personally would be highlighting the superheroes and the best versions of those heroes with book 1, 2, and 3 and that type of stuff. I don't know that We 3 or Death or Why the Last Man Standing really need to be a part of this line, but they are certainly not exactly superhero stuff, and it does show off that DC Comics has, a more wide variety of genres than maybe people even realize these days. But of those, the big winners, certainly Kingdom Come, despite my feelings for Mark Waid. I would also say Superman Birthright, which I feel like is a criminally overrated comic book. I think it's perfectly fine, but I don't think it's great. But a lot of people do seem to enjoy that particular story. But Deceased, I think, will do well. It's horror. That's a really cool story. DC heroes versus zombies, that kind of stuff always works. I'm very, very happy that they're doing DC The New Frontier. The Darwin Cook classic love letter to the Silver Age of comics is just absolutely brilliant. One of the coolest things I've read in the last 12 months or so. There's an entire review of every issue up on the Patreon right now. If you actually even just come on the $5 tier, you can get all those reviews as well as the entire Planetary series, which is not a part of this. But I do think Batman The Long Halloween, abso-freaking-lutely. Hopefully they do Dark Victory as well, because I think The Long Halloween absolutely stands the test of time as a great Batman story, one of the 5 greatest Batman stories of all time. And you could probably get me to put it in the top 3, right up there with Batman Year One and Dark Knight Returns. That's how much I feel about The Long Halloween, certainly top 5 for me. And then I think V for Vendetta feels pretty timely. I think people will be interested in that one. I think there is becoming more and more interest in that particular story, certainly notable because of the movie and stuff like that. But I think they are choosing some good books, but they're also making some stink choices, like, why are we doing Static? Why are we doing We 3? I understand you got an Authority movie coming out, and the Authority certainly, as an indie book, was quite popular, but it's never really been popular for DC. And I could have come up with a couple other ideas, but I imagine they will all come out over time. But it's a great format. People are happy about it. I have word from a little bird that I'm going to be getting my very own copy of a DC Compact comic for Christmas this year, and I'm excited about it. It's going to be in my stocking, and I will definitely be having that one on the plane ride home to the United States in May timeframe, where I hope to see all of you at the Dallas Fan Expo. It sounds like we might actually do a Thinking Critical meetup at a bar or something if we can get enough interest in that. But certainly the interest and success of DC's Compact Comics line is very good news for DC Comics. It's the first time they've been able to compete in bookstore chains with manga. Now, manga sales are trending down. They've certainly flattened out, and our dipping interest in manga has kind of petered out at the moment. But still, they were not competitive at all. And now they are competing with them. And I do think some of these titles will become perennial sellers in this new format. So job well done. Now let's get to some of this bad news, because there is bad news. While they're certainly hot at the top and they've got a format people are liking, they've got a lot of dead weight right now. DC Comics had 39 dead titles walking out of DC's 62 new titles in September 2024. This means 63% of the new DC line in September were dead titles walking. For comparison, Marvel had 36 dead titles walking out of 88 in September, for 41% of their titles being dead titles walking. Year over year numbers were up as DC Comics had 19 dead titles walking in September of 2023. For 38% of all their titles in 2023 in September, they are also up from 2 years ago when they had 25 dead titles walking in September 2022, which comprised 45% of all their titles that month. And it sucks because there are some good books on this list. I would say Dark Knights of Steel All Winter, while not great, certainly good enough. The DC Vault, Death in the Family, Robin Lives. Well, certainly Nietzsche is a pretty good book. The Boy Wonder was a great book. It sucks that nobody really noticed that one. Poison Ivy's been pretty decent. The Lobo Cancellation special was absolutely awesome. It was amazing. It's going to be in my top 10 comic books for the entire year. And also, shockingly, you guys are going to be surprised to hear this. Plastic Man No More from Christopher Cartwright. Well, far better than I could have ever anticipated. Very, very good. And we're seeing a lot of number ones debuting, like at 200 with Creature Commandos. We've got other books debuting outside of the top 200, like the DC Presents Trinity special. How is that happening? You know, Tom King is supposed to be one of your major superstar writers. He should not be debuting outside of the top 200. Now, these aren't set in stone numbers like we used to have from Dynamite, but they are the numbers that we do have and do show a trend of less than ideal enthusiasm in DC Comics. Certainly, Marvel had a lot of dead titles walking too. They had 3 less, but they also produced over 20 more new books in the month, and their total was at 41% of their entire line, while DC's at 63%, pushing the 2 out of every 3 titles are outside the top 100. DC can't be doing that. They need Absolute Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman, Detective Comics, and these books that garner interest. Not only do they need them to succeed, they need them to create interest in some of the stuff at the bottom and bring it up. Because you can't just be failing over and over and over again. You know, maybe a short-term strategy is Absolute Batman is able to carry some dead weight, but that's not going to be the most popular book at DC Comics forever. You know, I think it'll be back down, you know, within 6 months. It might be number 1, but it might be number 2, and Batman might jump over it because we do have Jim Lee and Jeff Lowe, but these top-tier titles can't just carry everything else. They need to start carrying their own weight, and they need the interest to start not only from the top, but actually go down to the bottom to where you see stuff like Lobo Cancellation Special, which is absolutely amazing. Kyle Holtz on that book never, ever actually marketed it, never told anybody it was coming out, and it's one of the best books, probably the best book they delivered the entire year. The only ongoing thing that even touches it is Green Lantern. Thankfully, that wasn't outside the top 100, because that would have been bad, but they need things to get better. They need to cut out the dead weight. Now, they are producing less comic books, certainly in January of 2025. I think the number is down to like 42, which is a major decline. So perhaps they're taking some, you know, measures to improve these numbers and realizing maybe we don't want to produce this many bad books or books that people don't have interest in. And then, you know, not 2 out of every 3 books won't end up being dead titles walking. You hope it's more like 1 out of every 3, or maybe even 4 out of every 10, or 2 out of 5, I guess is a better way to put it. And you can get those numbers down to more manageable levels. Now you get more bang for your buck, and hopefully you get more, the numbers really showing that these absolute titles are going to make a difference long term. I have doubts about that, but I do hope it happens. So there are some very good trend lines for DC Comics, specifically with All In Initiative, generating new interest. We know we got a big time, you know, Hush 2 thing going on in Batman in the not too distant future. But let's see what happens at the bottom. I'll keep an eye on it. Maybe I'll revisit this in about 6 months. But those are some numbers to keep an eye on for DC Comics. I do want to say thank you very much. If you enjoy what I'm doing here, providing an honest perspective, a little bit of levity, and some fun with comic books, and you would like to support what we're doing here on Thinking Critical YouTube, I do want to invite you to come visit me on Thinking Critical Patreon. We got lots of stuff going on there. The Comics Guilds, like I said, we reviewed all of the New Frontier books. We've done all of Planetary. We're in Middle World right now, and that's on the lowest tier. But we also have awesome podcasts, 2.5, sometimes 3 hours a week from Doc, Aaron Sparrow, Jim from Weird Science. If you haven't checked it out, there's a link in the video description. I hope to see you there very soon.